and ties them to specific transactions throughout a sales pipeline so that it can manage the progression of the customer, so that you don't have to keep going back and being, oh, this customer's now this and this customer's now that. It will handhold that process for you and drag it through. That's what this slide shows here. So across the top, we've got the onboarding sort of process, where we are creating a customer record with a lead status, although it will be called a lead when we go and look at it in a second. But there's nothing transactional occurring. So this could be, I've bought a list of phone numbers and email addresses. I'm just going to load them into my system, get my sales teams calling. It could be that you've got a handful of business cards from a trade event and you're just going to be keying those information in for a sales team to follow up. It's very loose, high level leads. You've got very basic information, and we don't know really anything about what we're going to sell to them yet, other than that we would like to sell them something. There is some interest there because we've managed to gather their details in some way, shape or form. The next stage we go into is a negotiation sort of phase, where we're going to create a record in NetSuite, and we've got opportunity quote and sales order, which are the three transactions in the sales pipeline. Opportunity and quote sort of get bulked together in this midsection, and you don't have to use both, but it ties together either way. That's why they're bulked together in the middle. If we associate a lead with any of these two records, NetSuite will automatically drag them forward into a prospect status, because they have now moved forward transactionally across this bottom row. So an opportunity and a quote, they're very, very similar records. Opportunity is meant to be an internal record, so there is no external output document from it. A quote is, we all know what quotes are. It's a quote. It has an external document where we can issue a quote to somebody. So it goes in this hierarchy, because if you are going opportunity, quote, sales order, this could be very high level. Yes, okay, I've spoken to this lead now, and actually I know, based on the conversation we've had, I think this could be worth X amount to the business. They're feeling a little bit lukewarm right now, and we could do this, we could do that, could do the other. We might not even know what particular items or services we're going to sell to them yet, but we've got a base record where we can start to compile some information, start to log phone calls, and start to track this a little bit closer and further. A quote, your items or service items or whatever they may be are mandated on that. You cannot save a quote without them, because it is further down that process. And we'll see in a short while the statuses associated with it have a heavier weighting as well for the purposes of the reporting pipeline and the forecasting. The final stage is sales order. Brilliant. We've finally got to the end. We've sold something to this person. And if we've associated the prospect, or indeed the lead, with a sales order, it will drag them up to our customer status where we have won them. So that's a customer from knowing very little about them to their first sale. What happens then is they stay as a closed won customer, and then you can iterate as many times as you want then through the opportunity quote sales order, or straight in at quote sales order, or straight in at sales order, and sell to them as many times as you want. But this initial lead prospect customer status happens once when they're first onboarded in, generally speaking. So that's what we're going to see sort of in action now, and we'll see these sort of things happening. We might flick back to this once or twice as we go through. We'll see where we go. I've mentioned statuses and weightings a little bit, so let's just go and have a look at where they live, which is going to be in Salesforce Automation and Customer Statuses. So out of the box, you're going to get a load of statuses that are standard, and they have standard-ish sort of weightings against them as how NetSuite thinks you should weight these. These are totally customizable by you. If the terminology is not really what you're after, you can come and change the name of these. But essentially what we've got is, at each stage of the customer's life cycle, we have a status that we can associate with them, a probability that we will win them. And as we move through, we can see these probabilities getting higher until we culminate at customer where we win them, lose them. And I said earlier, we may go backwards slightly. You don't necessarily go back to lead prospect. You go actually to a customer renewal state, which you've still won them, but you can have a customer go quiet for a while and sort of gently kill them off in your system, and then try and win them back again and with business. it's one of the lesser used parts of this lesser used functionality. So it's not used very often. Usually the lead prospect customer and then follow up reporting on how the customers are doing after suffices, but that is there if you wanted to use it as well. So as we go through, we'll see these are the statuses that will be associated, and NetSuite has a few settings in the background where, depending on what transaction we get to, it will set one of these as a default. So again, we can change the default if we want to, or we can just rename these and weight them differently. So we've probably got lots of questions now because I've talked about lots of individual things. So let's actually see something. Let's go and have a look at what a actual onboarding of a lead would look like. So if I come up here and give ourselves a new lead. As I said at the start, a lead is very light. There is not very much mandatory information on here at all as standard, because it's meant to be a light touch sort of transaction. Nothing too heavy there. As with anything in NetSuite, you can customize this form. You can make certain things mandatory if you deem a certain minimum level of data to be required for a lead to be entered into your system. But as they're that real early stage, a lot of people tend to do that more around the prospect customer side, but you can do it at any phase. So we see here I've got a lead form. We've got a default status of an unqualified lead because we're literally just keying them in today. We don't know anything about them. Let's give them a name. Let's give them a name of anything. I bet there's 500 John Smiths in my account at this stage. And as you can see there, I've got a one world account, so subsidiary is mandatory. But other than that, there are no little orange stars across my form. Everything else is completely optional for me to add them. What I am going to do while I'm here is talk a little bit about this sales rep field. So NetSuite's going to default in my demo account here. I'm listed as a sales rep, so it's defaulting me as the sales rep because I'm entering them in. But here is our first sort of tangent that we'll sort of veer off into. Here we've got a list of all my sales reps. I've also got an option to reassign using territories. So this is the first little bit of, if you want it, it's there and you can set it up. But if you don't want it, you don't have to use it. And people rarely use it, and it's a bit of a shame. But what I'm going to do here is, just because I'm keying in data, I'm actually going to say, don't give me all of this. I've been unfortunate enough to get the data entry job, but let's reassign these based on the data that's going into them. And let's just force one, and we'll see some behavior, and then we'll go and have a look at why that behavior occurred. So let's give this customer an address. And he's going to have an address which is going to be that one there. So the postcode is an LE postcode. Yes, that will work nicely, I believe. Reassign using territories. Let's save our lead. It's going to tick away, and we can see here it's associated that to David Smith, another sales rep in my development account, with the territory of CV or LE postcode. So what is that? Let's go and have a look at sales territories. So if we go to Salesforce Automation, in our sales management area, we've got a set of sales rules and some sales territories. So let's go and have a look at these. So I've got a couple of rules set up in this account. So this, as you can imagine, is going to be just a basic rule of, if this, do this. So I've called this one if the postcode is CV or LE, and we can see here the criteria is that the postal code is CV, and a bit of sub criteria, it could also contain LE. So this is going to be any postcode that contains CV or LE is going to match any condition of this rule. You could build a complex condition where you want to match everything and be very specific about how things get associated. But that's that individual rule, quite easy and basic data. Got another one here that just says if the email address contains @bbs.com and nothing else, we've just got to match all conditions. So anything with that email domain is on a different rule. What a territory is either it's a piece of logic that can bulk together those rules. So I've played it fairly simple in my account and just said, here's one sales territory called email BBS, and it has this particular rule associated with it. You can collect multiple rules together and really make this complex, but for the sake of a demo and just keeping things simple so we can actually step through it and understand it, try to keep it as basic as possible. You'll notice there's one that I didn't talk about, which is this default round robin one, which is if you do not set any rules whatsoever, it will just loop through all of your sales rep and go, you haven't had one in a while, here you go, next, next, next. So what we then do is once we've built up our rules of what sort of things we want to target, we'll then build up a territory and say, okay, here's my collection of rules, and based on these rules, we're going to say, here's the reps that get those particular things. The next thing we've got to do is give it a hierarchy so it knows how to work through and establish them. And that's this one here. We can see this priority list. So it's always going to evaluate this particular sales territory first, then this one, and then I've just stuck 1 million against my default round robin to make sure it falls very much to the bottom of the list. There we go. That's my list. So what this has then done is, because I set this to allocate by territories, it's read the address line, saw that my postcode contains LE, and it's gone to the CV or LE postcode and associated it correctly with David Smith. So that's a nice little bit of functionality. Some people just, they'll go, these are my leads, I'm putting them in, they're mine. It depends on the type of business. If you're buying masses and masses of data, or you just have lots and lots of leads and you have maybe regional sales reps and that sort of thing, it can help to put some structure around where they land instead of just falling in people's laps and then having to be reassigned. So pretty useful piece of functionality, but one of the little offshoots we're going to have today. So we have now a lead in the system. As we've said before, it looks very much like its own type of record, a lead, but it is at its core a customer record with a lead status on it. So we can do a couple of things to move this forward. As we saw here, we're ultimately wanting to win this and get it down to customer. I've talked one way about how we can drag it forward transactionally, and we'll have a little look at that in a second as well. But another way is we might just have a conversation with this person and we might just decide, you know what, you are now hot to trot. Maybe you meet certain criteria where I determine that you are now no longer a lead. I've spoken to you enough and you're going to become a prospect. Maybe it's both. Maybe I just want to edit some details on my lead and I don't then want to go away and create another transaction. That's where this convert button comes in. If I press this button and if I filled in all my details correctly, let's go to my one I was actually going to press this button on. Let's press this button on a one where I've actually filled in some more data and actually built this up to be a prospect. We can see it loads a convert lead screen. So here's one of the other leads in my account. You can see I've got some more detail around him, so I'm happy that he's going to move forward a little bit. What we have at the bottom here is what's going to happen when this lead gets converted, and it's a quick way of entering lots of transactions at the same time and having the system do some lifting work for you. So we're converting him. He's going to obviously move up the ladder from a lead. And he's going to go to a prospect. I'm going to reassign him using territories. We'll see where he lands. I haven't looked at his data in a while, so we'll see that working. This is a company. It is, what's he called? He's called Jungle Deliveries. So we might want to create a contact for him as well. So let's make the Dalton Hume guy here. He can be our primary contact at Jungle Deliveries when we move this forward now. We've had a bit more conversation with him. We know who he is. We're going to move him up the ladder. And we've got some optional actions here to, again, go and do some things for us in the background. It could automatically create that opportunity record for us so I don't have to do it. Let's just give that a title. That one will do. I think I'm a computer company here, so you might see things computer related. I've had a conversation with him. I think he's worth about 10 grand to me today. And I think I'm going to close him next week. I'm going to leave that one blank. You don't have to do all of these. I say it is optional. But this would, in fact, no, let's do it. Let's show what it can do. I think his name was John, wasn't it? It wasn't even close to being John, it was Dalton. And my follow-up will be started next week, so I'm going to close him next week. Cool. Hit go. System will now go and do all of these things which would usually take me to at least 3 different screens and a lot of editing and saving and filling in fields. Because I've got a lot of defaults set up, things like my default statuses where I want things to land, default weightings, it knows what to do for me. So you can see there we've converted him up to a prospect. If I have a look in here now, we can also see it created for us a contact here of Dalton Hume. So my record is now, okay, you're selling to the company Jungle Deliveries. Here's your contact. So there's that Dalton Hume guy that we got the details from early doors. You can see what company he belongs to, and he's now our primary contact. And we have an opportunity record for a new office fit out. We're currently in discussion with him. And we're looking like it's going to be 10 grand. And because of our default status of in discussion, this has a 20% weighting on it. Let's go and have a look at the other manual way of doing that. And for this, I will use my other good old John Smith lead. Let's see, 121. Let's go and manually key an opportunity. Like me, are you today? One, two, one, John Smith. Excellent. You can actually see that there as well. So although it is a lead record, it has the same identifier that every customer does. And some of you may be familiar with opportunities, but we're pulling it through at that level as well into here. So this opportunity record is basically what the system's just created for me on that other prospect. But here we're going to see if I associate this with a lead, we'll see that behavior pulling him forward. So I'm going to do something a little bit different with this one. I'm going to decide with John Smith that I've actually identified him as a decision maker. And in my account, that has a slightly heavier probability on it. This particular one, I'll close off in the future again. Here's my projected total field that I had on my quick create before. Just put a value in there. Here we can see where these weightings start to come into play, and actually that's a horrendous value, so I'll use a nice one for the sake of showing you this maths. Our projected total gives us a weighted total for this particular opportunity. So although this is very gut feel, based on how far I pull them through the sales pipeline, they'll get a heavier probability of close, which gives me a stronger feeling about what I'm actually going to get out of this. Similarly, I can do this with this range. So almost by accident, I typed in a massive number and then changed it. So I might know that I feel like I'm going to get up to there, but it could be anywhere between this number and this number. My weighted total will always be pulled off what my projected is. I might have a more sensible range there. It might be 10 to 12 grand. Everything else on here, although I've got a mandatory line here for item, that's actually mandatory within the sub list. As I said earlier, I don't need any more information at opportunity stage. I could have just had a high level conversation where I think I know a certain amount about when I'm going to close it, what it means to me in terms of value, and how comfortable I am with how I think I win it. You can overwrite these if you allow it. I might think, you know what, he's not quite here yet, but I feel he's bigger than 30. Just because it's got a default against it doesn't mean you can't come and bump it up if you feel a bit more confident about what's going on through there, and it will adjust all the weighted totals and recalculate things. Let's save this down. And we'll see now John Smith has been dragged forward to a prospect, John Smith. So we now know that he's associated with an opportunity and it's dragged him forward. What I'd also need to do if I wanted to at this point was do a follow-up. So in my Dalton Hume Jungle Deliveries one previously, I created a task as well, didn't I? Which created that task for me to follow up with Dalton. There it is. In here, I would have to go and obviously manually do that. So there is some nice sort of quick win pieces around the conversion of leads. But if you don't want to manage the conversion of leads, the system will just do it for you. As you talk to them, as you transact and pull them forward, if you can identify that you have them in your system, it will just manage that for you and pull them up the sales pipeline. Next stage of our sales pipeline was quote. So let's push this forward. Let's go and I'm on my prospect, aren't I? Would help if I was on my opportunity. I can convert you. And here we go. So we've got a specific status and weighting associated with our estimate. NetSuite determines it's 50-50 at this stage. You're giving them a quote, they're either going to have it or they're not. Again, you can decide that your quotes might be higher or lower probability. It's up to you how you set these. I've obviously left them standard for this. Here, as we said before, we now know more about this customer. An item or something, a service item or that sort of thing is mandated to be added at this stage. So I now move from a figure that I just put in a box, which is rough gut feel, into actual items and actual costings. So in here now, I'm probably going to struggle very much to get 10 grand out of these items. Let me see if I can find some laptops or something. About 20 laptops. What's that going to get me? Got to get me thereabouts, surely. 12 grand. Check me out. So that'd be in keeping with where I thought I was in that 10 to 12 range. But now there is no projected total on this field. It's going to use the total of the quote, and it's going to use the percentage probability based on this value, because I've actually got something physical on here now. I think I've got any mandatory fields in this place. We'll just get this on. Lovely sandbox speed. There we go. We're on. So we've got a 50% probability of close. Again, you might have extra conversations with this person going forwards. You can, obviously, as you can see here, we can just go straight up to a sales order, or cash share or an invoice if you don't utilize sales orders. But we have a handful of now specific proposal statuses in here. If you remember, very start, we had lead qualified, unqualified. Right now, we've got a whole host of proposal statuses. Let's decide that we're not just here anymore, we're actively in negotiation with him. So it's bumped our probability up. Let's save that. That again is going to recalculate what the weighted cost of this weighted value, sorry, of this quote is to us. Also, if we go back now to our prospect, just because it's dragging our prospect forward and we've got a probability of how much we're going to win on a specific opportunity, it is also showing us how likely we're going to win this actual prospect up to a customer status. So we've got here now a pretty good estimate going for 75%. So we're 75% sure we're going to win not only this estimate, but this person as a customer. And again, this is the one that's a one-time thing. So that you're tracking how people are coming through your pipeline. How good are your salespeople at actually converting things or moving things through that pipeline, but then individually on every single one of these sales records, how likely am I to win that particular one? So you can have many opportunities underneath one prospect, many quotes associated with them, and they can all have their individual estimates and probabilities, but it's going to drag the customer through based on your highest level one, so you know where they're going to be, how likely they're going to be won. So we've got this far, we might as well finish off our little journey and pull him all the way up to sales order. don't think I've got many mandatory fields in here either, so it should be a save job. Let's go and fulfillment. And off you go. Bit of quiet time while Sandbox gets its life together. Not only Sandbox, but also a development account. So your Sandboxes are probably faster than this. You lucky people. There we go. So we now have a closed won order. Let me just check I've got the right one because I've been bouncing between John and Dalton. We'll reload him now. He's now transacted with us. We have a sales order. He is now a closed won customer. He is one of ours. He's completed his pipeline. Similarly, we've got a sales order, which means we're also at the tail end of our transactional sales pipeline for the first time. Because we've been nice and we've linked everything together, you can forcefully do these things in isolation. If you do so, you've got to go and manage your open transactions. If you follow the path that NetSuite's laid out for you, it will go and do everything for you and close everything down behind it as well. So it knows this estimate has now been processed and it's 100% going to win because it's related to a sales order. That's linked to an opportunity, which is now 100% won because it's linked to the estimate that's linked to the sales order, and we've happily and nicely and neatly closed down everything behind us. What we can now do with this person is transact with them as many times as we want to in the future, and we can do, as we said before, we can go opportunity quote sales order again, or we can drop in at any point during that sales pipeline. You might just pick up the phone and say, I need this, I need it next week. You can throw a sales order on. You might ring up and go, about 6 months time, I've got this project, I think it's about this much. Big opportunity there to stick an opportunity record in the system and go and do those sorts of follow-ups. So you've got lots of ways to do it. It's very flexible. You don't have to do this verbatim as it's laid out in this slide. You can drop in and out as sort of as fit your business processes and how you actually operate. So that's the first element of what we're going to look at today, sort of the onboarding journey of going from a business card to a customer, how NetSuite helps you manage that pipeline and manage the lead nurturing side of it and dragging that lead up through the statuses. We've had a look at lots of things around those statuses and weightings, but we haven't actually seen that anywhere we can actually utilize it yet. We know it's on the transactions. We know we can write searches and reports on it and pull all that stuff out. But it'd be really nice if there was one nice place we could actually sit down as a sales rep, look at that, manage it, and actually compare where I am to where the business wants me to be. And that's where we go into our next section, quotas and forecasts. So in NetSuite, a quota is a salesperson's target. A forecast is basically a snapshot of that person's sales pipeline at the point that the forecast is run. So what we'll do first is have a look at our sales targets. I believe I have the majority in here, but I've got one spare that I can stick in. So Cedric doesn't have one for 2021. So let's go and have a look and set up a quota for Cedric for this year. So you can get really granular with quotas. For the purpose of the demo, I'm going to keep it simple again. The only mandatory field we really have is who is this for? And if you're a one world account, what subsidiaries is it for? So you could say, it's across all subs, or it's a very specific sub. My data in this account is quite wide ranging. I've got all sorts of things in, so I'm going to leave it consolidated, but you can say this is specific to a sub if you do have that in a one world account. The year defaults to the current year that you're in, but you could be doing these for next year, the year after, and sort of preloading them. And then we've got these fields here. This is where it can get granular. You can give somebody a quota for a specific item at a specific location. Quarantine? No, warehouse. Thank you. You can get really granular and mix and match these sorts of things. It tends to get complicated. I normally tell people if they're going to do this, start basic, get used to using it, and then add the complexity in afterwards. Because once you've started running with it, you're comfortable with it, you're comfortable with what the reports are showing you, you can then start to dig deeper and fine tune and really get to the bottom of things. The quotas will be cumulative, and that's something that throws people out. So if I made a quota for a specific location, That would be a very specific quota for that person at that location. If I then give them a specific item quota, it would add on top of that location one, not be in conjunction with. So you do have to be careful about mixing and matching these, which is why I say keep it simple, get a feel, add complexity. All that talking, all I've done is set sales rep field. So let's get some more fields on this thing set. We could say that Cedric's target for this year is 125 grand, and we could just leave it at that. A better way to do it would be to actually, let's distribute that equally between the months so we can actually view it versus his forecast snapshot, which we're going to look at in a second. So 125 grand a year equals about that much, well, exactly that much per month. We might not know that. We might be a bit more of a seasonal business. We might have ebbs and flows. Let's clear all those. We might just want to come in here and free type values in. It might be that we don't know what our annual amount is because, like me, my maths is a bit shoddy every now and then and go, well, it's about 12 grand a month. So just put it in for the year for me. Brilliant. Okay, it's 144 grand for the year. Well, actually, November's a busy month. Yeah, let's just overwrite that. That can be a 15 grand month for Cedric. So you can pick and choose different ways to go and fill it in. You know, a few fancy buttons. You could just go and fill in 12 fields, which doesn't sound too arduous. Depends how many sales reps you've got. Depends who's putting these in. You might have a particular bulk that you just want to soldier through, and that's handy functionality with the fill downs and things. So let's save Cedric's quota, which now brings him in line, I think, 2, 2, 3. We'll talk about him in a second, and 2. The second has passed. Let's go and talk about David Smith. David Smith in my account is my sales manager. So we can see here he has 2 quotas for 2020. He has a team quota and he has a personal quota. So he's got to make 540 grand for his team has to make 540 grand. Him personally needs to make 120 grand. And again, these are cumulative. So actually, David Smith needs to be making, maths, £660,000. That's his actual quota for 2020. He's got to deliver 120 grand himself, and he needs to manage his team to deliver 540 grand. And that's what a team quota does. Let's set up his team quota for 2021. It's for David Smith, and basically tick that box. That makes it a team quota. What that means is the sales reps that are below David Smith in the supervisor hierarchy, all of their sales will count towards his team quota. So all of his people that are keying stuff through, it will feed into this quota for him. And I'll just give him a random number and we'll move on here because we'll see it in action in one of the reports later about how it all feeds in. So you could give this to David Smith and not give him a separate quota, and he could be sort of ticking along in that, or you can assign separate things. But yeah, you can set sales targets for your sales managers. Maybe your sales managers don't key in transactions. Maybe they're not on the phones. Maybe they're not out on the road. They're just in a management perspective. You can still measure them as well. If anyone's not clear with what I meant by the supervisor hierarchy, on all of the employee records, there will be a supervisor field. You can see it there. And this builds a hierarchy right from the bottom to the top of the business with all of your employee records, all the way up to essentially the MD. And a lot of the reports will use that supervisor hierarchy to create buckets in reports that you can sort of expand out. So if you've got several sales teams and you ran it as the sales director, you would have buckets for all of your sales teams, and you can expand out all those buckets to see what your individual sales reps are doing within them. Again, we'll go and look at a report for that in a second. So I've just realized I've been looking into my camera, doing loads of fancy hand gestures, and my camera's off. So we'll look at that in a second. So quotas are our sales targets. It's what do we want our salespeople to be hitting. We now need to go and have a look at what they're doing, and that lives in forecasts. Forecasts are built in NetSuite as like a management tool for people to sit down, maybe with the reps, or the reps to look at themselves if they are trusted to do so. Some people have quite low level Billy Basic reps that are just hammer the phones, I'll manage your forecast, you do this. Some have more account manager type of reps that can manage their own workload, and they'll be interested in this sort of thing about feeling where they're going to be for the period that they're looking at this forecast for. Let's go and run a forecast for Julian, who's in my account but doesn't have a forecast yet. He does have one for this month. I have my 3. I will run one anyway. Rerun one. So forecast, when it runs, we will again set to sales rep, and we're looking at a specific period that we're going to run the forecast for. Our quotas in our account run monthly, so I've run this monthly, but you can push it out if you want to, and do a different start date, get a wider period. But generally speaking, you're going to want to be running this in conjunction with your quotas. Again, I'm going to run it at a consolidated subsidiary, but you can pick and choose down to a subsidiary if you choose so in your OneWorld accounts. And what this is going to do is it's going to pull everything that's in this sales rep's sales pipeline between these dates. So all their opportunities, quotes, unbilled orders, so orders they've actually put on but have not been invoiced yet or we haven't had cash for yet, and their actual orders, so the actual invoiced order, cash order. Once this is saved, it will be available in reports to be measured against. So you can then compare that quota and that forecast. I realize I just jumped the gun a little second there. Let's actually go back and look at some of the rest of the detail that's in here. So yeah, once it's saved down, you've actually then got 2 records that you can actively compare against each other. So we've got what is your forecast, what is in your pipeline versus what is in your quota, what do I want you to sell. The forecast, which I don't know how I managed to gloss over this, was the bit we've actually come here to look at, and that's where do all of our probabilities and weights and all of that stuff come together to actually give me a number. And this is where it lives. So if we have a look at my one here, I've got a handful of opportunities. They've all got forecast types against them, and that's pretty much high, medium, low. Or there might be something that's just like, this is a really speculative quote and I don't think it's going anywhere, but I've got to quote him. You might want to completely omit it from your forecast so it doesn't skew your numbers up. So you've got, yeah, I think this is going well, about average. No, sorry, well, worst case. This is going fairly badly, medium, upside, or omitted completely. Let's put upside in here. So I've got a bit of a mix, and you've got these settings for every single record that would come through your pipeline during that period. You can see here, we can actually manage some of the fields that are on these records from here. This is going back to the bit I said about this could be a sit down meeting with the sales manager where you look at it and actively work with the person and go, okay, where are you with this? How is this particular project going? And you might go, oh yeah, you're having a good time with that. Let's bump that up. And it will actively go and bump those records up in the background. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Let's override the default and bump him up. And then we can rerun the calculations. And this is where our calculations are going to sit. So we've got the individual weightings for each one of those particular opportunities in this case. So this is going to be based off my 3 entry projected total field. It's calculating the up, down, and most likely based on my weightings and percentages, and giving me that as a breakdown so I can see I'm having a bad month by the looks of this. I think my quote is quite high for this year. I need more estimates. I've got opportunities. I've got some unbilled orders, which are going to be some actuals coming along. I'm really running dry on quotes. I need to be, feeding my pipeline. You might have someone that's really, really quote heavy, but they've got nothing new coming into their pipeline. So they're going to have probably a good month this month, but they might be struggling next month and that sort of thing. And you can run these off for future periods as well. I normally tell people to sort of refrain going too far ahead, because obviously if you are quite a reactive sales business, or things are like quickly in the door and out the door, you're not necessarily going to have much future to be able to forecast against. If you've got longer drawn out projects with much longer dates, then it makes much more benefit to sort of spread that out and have a wider picture and run those longer periods. So that's what a forecast is going to do for us, it's going to eat into all of that sales pipeline for that particular rep and give them a visibility of their pipeline and the ability to go and manage individual ones and just fine tune and tweak some of the values, give them a picture of where they're going to be versus where they're going to be targeted to be. I've talked a little bit about the reports, so let's go and have a look at one of the most important report if you're going down the forecast and quota route is this one, sales forecast versus your quota. So this is going to run, and this was the buckets that I was talking about. I've not got many reps in my system, but I've got David Smith as my sales manager sort of thing, so I can see his, and I can blow out into his individual teams. And you can just imagine that hierarchy building with a second team, a third team, and then maybe a sales director above it. And you can sort of, depending on the level you are in that supervisor hierarchy, you can sort of see different things in your sales reports. You can, with permissions, completely block people out of looking into other people's teams for privacy reasons or whatever you may want to do. But yeah, your sort of your high level director team can come in and really drill down into, right, sales looking okay, let's have a drill into here. Well, they're doing really well. Oh, those aren't doing so well. They're carrying my business. I need to kick someone's head in down here maybe, or maybe they need some encouragement and a pat on the back or whatever. But here we can see for the period this has been run, what the person's quota is. So it goes to their quota record and pulls their monthly value. They're most likely, their worst case, all the information from their forecast. It pulls all of those in and then gives us a forecast versus quota variance. So we can see here some people in my account have oh, he doesn't have a low one, he's fine. Yeah, some people aren't doing so well, some people are doing well, but you get a percentage output of where are they against their quota. So that's a really handy one. Some further ones that can also be handy if you then go down the route of getting your item level forecast and quotas and things up and running. When I can remember where I'm going, reports, forecast, I want item, I want customer, and I want one of the most important ones, accuracy. So I can have a look, because that forecast is going into my sales pipeline and some of that sales pipeline will have items associated with it. I can maybe look at what's going on in individual buckets of time to see if there's particular spikes in an item demand or potential future spikes in an item demand, because at this point I am pre-sale. So that's quite a handy one. I can look at my customers and see by customer what is currently in their pipeline. So I might have a particular customer that always buys a certain amount a month, and I can go, oh, that looks low this month. Maybe go and have a word with whoever's assigned to that sales rep, and maybe see what's going on there. Maybe there's some stuff that he doesn't feel too hot about. Maybe he's omitted it from his forecast, and we actually just need to tweak that. We've got visibility down to customer level here as well. And the third one we're going to look at is the accuracy one. So yeah, it's all great going, yeah, my salespeople think this number is coming in and they feel like that number's coming in, and well, maybe this percentage is okay. Well, what we can do over time is look at what did we forecast versus what did we actually win for these particularly reps, and then go, okay, what is the accuracy? So we can see here, there's a variance of 36% from I forecasted nearly 15 grand, I only pulled in 5.5. And it looks like I've copied and pasted quite a lot of data through my dev account, but you can see the picture would build as you've gone on. So you could see if a particular rep is either overcooking his valuations or whether someone's being a little bit too conservative and they need to sort of loosen up a little bit. You can get a proper feel for what did you forecast versus what did that individual rep actually sell. So you've got ultimately you've got to control, because one of the things I hear quite a lot is like, yeah, it's fine. People saying, I think this opportunity is worth this, but what is it? Well, you can start to then look and have conversations and manage people and show them themselves, because obviously these are all tools to help salespeople get better, manage their pipelines, see where they're falling short, and come through ultimately for you. A final point on the reports is actually some pipeline reports that I pulled out, which are particularly handy. which live in Salesforce automation. So we talked about those pipelines earlier and visibility. So we've had visibility now from a numbers perspective, but we can also get high level views of what those pipelines are looking like and who has what where. So if we look for this particular report, we can see a breakdown of our prospects, what percentages are sat where. So we can see most of our prospects are actually sat at this very early stage. We're not pulling many through. It's about there, isn't it? It's about half, just over half. But it can give you a feel about how well are you actually starting to chunk through your leads, your prospects. And another one is seeing that by sales rep. So if we look in reports, Salesforce automation again, we have pipeline by sales rep. So again, we can see of our reps, who has got what in what buckets through their entire pipeline. So it's another quite handy report for a piece of high level visual. This one's probably more of a managerial view, because realistically you'd want your sales reps to be at the coalface with the forecast and the quotas and making sure things are fine tuning. But as a high level view of, okay, who's got what and where is it? This is a good report. So we can see who's got what in discussion. Dave Smith's got one customer in discussion. He's got one where he's identified a decision maker. And you can see how good your reps are actually forcing these people through their pipelines. In terms of demo, that's what I have for you today. So we'll recap through. We've talked about lead onboarding and how NetSuite can handhold and help us out with creating records for us if we don't want to manually do them, or drag our leads and prospects forward for us as we naturally would just transact them anyway through the pipeline, and how it naturally closes everything down for us if we follow its linear fashion that it wants us to do. We talked about an optional piece of functionality which I find is rarely used, but definitely has its place, and that's sales territories and forecasts. And that helps us assign those leads to individual people rather than having to manage who's got what in terms of workload. You can define structures and specific rules about how people get assigned to your reps. And then we looked at quotas and forecasts, quotas being the sales targets that you're assigning your people, and we can make them team targets if we need to. If we've got people that don't transact, we can still manage them through a target. And then we looked at the forecasts, which is that visibility of all of those pipelines, and really crunching together everything we'd seen as we went through that pipeline there, all the different statuses, the weightings, the percentages, where people are, and really tracking the data and where it is in the individual in the pipelines themselves of winning leads or winning actual business through those transactions. So thank you everyone for listening. I'll flick my camera back on and sharing my screen. If I need to, I can flick it back up. But over to you guys, really. Open to any questions you may have around it.
I guess the kind of, if you don't mind me starting, it's I guess this kind of first question really is something that Katie and I have been working together on as well, is in terms of making this a kind of an easy transition from the system that we already use at Fendercare to rolling this system out for the teams, is how we can kind of customize the sort of language that we use and sort of change the terminology within the system. So we can try and adapt it. In some ways, we want to rationalize and make sure that we kind of maybe changing and modernizing our language through Fendercare, but we don't want to change it too much so people are confused as they begin to start using the system. Plus, we've got our own language across all the businesses in Fendercare as well, which we want to be able to use. How easy is that to do? Is that something that BrightBridge can do in terms of, is that part of the package, or is that extra to do that sort of stuff? Maybe
it's
Jeff Jeff's itching to answer there, but I'll let the BrightBridge people.
Yeah, it's essentially a setting in the account, so it's something that you do part as you go live. I'll share my screen up. So there's a screen in NetSuite settings to rename records and transactions. So if you don't call prospects, you can call them whatever you want to call them. Similarly, leads. You probably saw quotes called estimate in a lot of places. I don't think I've renamed that transaction, but here you've got sort of your headline. What's a subsidiary called? Some of them you almost never rename because it makes sense to have them in here. But all of your individual records, once you've got all your features enabled, they'll list out here. So you can see there, estimate is still called estimate. I could change that to be quote. I could change my prefix to be or abbreviation to be QU, hit save, and that's going to rename estimates to quote everywhere in the system now. So yeah, it's very easy.
Perfect.
We have made some changes already, such as the opportunities are now called inquiries, which is from our old system as such. There has been some discussion about whether we should or not, but it's comfort feeling for people that are using it.
Yeah, the only downside I've ever found to it is if you go and use NetSuite standard help afterwards, you'll find people going looking for what you've called the record, whereas NetSuite will always refer to it as an opportunity. So it's knowing that your people need to be aware of that thing if they're going to go and try and self-help, or the people internally who naturally funnel them to, usually some sort of super user, that they are aware of it and they can actually react accordingly.
Guys, sorry to butting in. Just to add, as we have fully customized our system, so imagine you can, the only thing that you have to be careful is that if you're going to rename some fields or even rename the forms themselves, just be careful with your saved searches, because then you have to take basically the field ID. But you can fully customize everything, to be honest with you. If I could show you our system, you would see we've changed everything. But we're using, I will give you an example. For instance, you have lead qualified. We have a lead unqualified also status. So, and we have added also more entity types. So, for instance, we have used JSON with a workflow to have a qualification list, for instance. So you can do whatever you can imagine, guys. It's fully customizable.
Right.
Yeah, is that an extra set of statuses that you've added in there, Theo?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's part of the thing I sort of touched on lightly earlier. That list of customer statuses, although it is there, and I said you could rename them and you can change the weightings, you can add more if you really need to go to town on this and really need to dissect a particular section. You can really get granular with it if you wanted to. It's easy to add. It's making sure you've got the sales process internally to then maintain that. So it's all well and good having, okay, I've got 10 statuses for prospect. Are your people actually going to do them? And are they actually going to manage them in that way? Because NetSuite will pull them forward and go, here's my default for this record status. And it will go, you now live in that pot. You now live in that pot. If you've got more granular pots that you're intending your people to manage, you've either got to make sure they manage them, or maybe have a small piece of workflow or something that can read particular fields on a record and make a decision and set it for them. Because you can have certain things in the background to handhold and help those things along as well.
Or automate your, Mark, to what you're saying, or automate your pipeline also. So for instance, we're using, like, if we have a customer record without any sales activity for a year, let's say, or 2 years, so it can reset also the status type again. So to be a lead qualified than a customer. So you can even automate that. So it's up to you guys.
Okay, good. Mark, that list that you showed where you could basically automate any of the sort of terminology, where was that again?
That's what I was just about to ask.
That lives in setup, company, rename records, transactions. You'll probably need
do it, but I think it'd be good for certainly the sales teams to kind of get together. Presumably accounts will have their own kind of language that they want to use as well, and so on and so forth for the rest of the departments in the business. But I think first and foremost, as we're talking about leads and prospects, that it's probably a good thing for the sales teams to get together and just work through that list and kind of maybe just have a simple spreadsheet output from that, and then decide, what we currently use, what we can currently adapt to, or what we want to change, and have kind of a bit of a red, amber, and green
a lot
scenario.
of it's the things you normally get is, wow, that's really American, and they'll want to change things like a bill to a purchase invoice, and things like that. Estimate to quote is a really common one. A lot of the other ones, they're probably
used specifically in our business. We would have a sales target, for instance, and kind of, I've been in businesses where we've used quotas, but again, that's very kind of almost Americanism. It's generally a quarterly target.
I've made a note of that, Ben, purely because BrightBridge have changed these for us already. It's just good to know where they are in there. Say, for example, from our mid-month reporting, and this is going to be for Sadie as well, is that this would be good for that because of picking detail up, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, we adjust run rate because quite a lot of our orders are, come in short time scale. So I don't know how we'd do that within NetSuite because obviously it isn't we've got the orders or even maybe a lead or a prospect in at that point. So, but yeah, it would be good to use as our base for our mid-month flash.
Mm. Okay, so
add
Ben,
a slight caveat into what we're talking here as well. So this page lists out everything that you can rename in NetSuite. Not every transaction is in here. So you just mentioned Quota there. I've just gone to look for Quota. Quota isn't a transaction as such, and I don't think it's listed as a renameable record. So that might be worth one that we can.
That's something we'll have to adapt to then in that case, I think.
Yeah, there is some things that it's like can be a little frustrating. So another one is like bins. Bins isn't in this list. I don't think. Yeah. So you've got like bin put away, bin transfer, but you can't rename what a bin is in a warehouse for holding a piece of stock. I've had somebody say before, can I rename a bin to a location and a location to be this? Well, you could rename a location to something else, but a bin is another one that I know of that comes up. So everything that is possible to be renamed is here in this page and in this list. So have a look through. Some of the things, you're going to have to adjust to, and that's just, it's a new system and there's change occurring. Some things are just like, why can't I change that? It's just such a silly little thing. Why can't I change it? But yeah, everything we've got is in here. And some things will just be new to you anyway. And you'll think, well, should I migrate over to that? But if it's something like a vendor prepayment application, you might not want to call it that because that's really wordy and long, and you can just shorten things down to make them a bit more user friendly.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the sort of early stages of the discussion that myself, Daniel, and Katie had been working towards. It's sort of, let's align the terminology first and foremost, and then we can start using the system as we understand it, and then from there we can begin to sort of streamline it a little, because obviously there's a lot in the package.
I've got a point to add quickly as well. Just I know we've been looking at records specifically and the naming of records, but if you've got a transaction or an entry form on the screen, you can customize those forms and change the labels as well on a field by field basis per form. So that might be really helpful as well.
Yeah, that is, I'll show that up actually. So things on a form, like some of the standard fields like projected total might not be what you refer to that as internally. You could change the label on that field to read something else. So you could come in here and say projected total, that's probably fits a rubbish one there, but I'll just take something off it so you can see it work. And I'll just save and edit and reload that record. That's the wrong one. I want to be on that one. So yeah, it just changes the label in the thing. That calls back something Theo mentioned earlier though. You could then quite easily read that and go and make a report and say, I want a folder field that's called projected. The field isn't called projected, it's labeled projected. The field underneath is still called projected total. Yeah. So that's another thing that you need to take care of. It's one thing making your forms easy for a user to read, but somebody somewhere needs to be sort of super usery and go, yes, I've controlled this and I know I've fed this down to these people to call it this thing, but ultimately when I'm reporting, these are the fields I need to pull. You can always check it, so you can turn field IDs on and just come and click on the field and get the name, but it's something to be aware of.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or set up multiple templates in the forms, guys, also. So on a form, you can set up multiple view templates that you can fully customize again.
Yeah. Ben, that's what Katie, that's what we're doing.
as in products/STS?
Products have theirs, STS have theirs, OTS, etc.
Yeah.
So it's just, we don't want to end up as we have at the moment, where you've got a view that's got several pages to it that have got different parts of the businesses. We're trying to make it as simple as possible.
Yeah. Yes, so I guess each area of the business is going to have some responsibility for input into NetSuite. So again, the employee record hierarchy, is that something that's going to be managed by the HR team then?
At the moment, that'll become under my area, but then we're looking probably to move it out, as I say, to HR. But then again, it's who within HR, so it's probably a joint effort there. Yeah. Okay. And everything in terms of like work on probabilities, that can all be aligned to what we already currently do. Yeah. Okay. Good. See, most of the transactions that we will generate will be prospect. I've not really got a handle on it, but let me just guess about 10% will be lead, and that'll probably come from exhibitions and trade shows and things like that, and maybe the occasional kind of chat in the street, chat in the bar kind of thing. It'll come from there. But I would say 90% would be prospect rather than lead. Yeah. When you're looking at, as I say, in respect to leads, what we're looking at is using web forms, and either from the website or from events, getting someone just to complete it on a tablet or something like that, and it will pump that straight into Internet Suite. Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, cool.
Because about what we were discussing, guys, because we are having multiple subsidiaries, because we have overseas offices. So we're setting it up everything on the employee record itself. So basically, we set up the subsidiary for each one of our employees, because you have many options like expenses, also approvers, etc., etc. So we set up everything in the first level on the employee record.
Yeah, I think the being able to reassign using territories is probably quite useful for us, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which surprisingly in one of the workshops that was said we won't use it, but I've made a note of that down as well, is to say that territories would be quite good, and I think that would be quite good on the STS side as well.
Yeah.
Right. When you're looking at who's you've got the people who's handling it, but you've got actually then got the owner of it, who's going to be managing it from there. And also one of the things that I saw, and that Mark, Fiona, it'll be good when we actually see the recording, because at the moment the way that's been shown to us is that you go in, you create a lead, then you've got to go in and create an opportunity, then you've got to go in, etc. You actually had it on one screen there, which I think that would be really good for the guys to do as well. So I'm interested in that, and we'll be speaking to our consultant about it. Yeah. I think they being able to reassign by territories, I see that being used quite often. I mean, it's been used today for an inquiry we've received through the Middle East, through the Far East. We've done it through the Middle East, so I think that'll be quite useful for us, definitely, to consider. One of the things we're looking towards using is Locate, which is going to be address lookup software. So again, one of the issues that we have is with people misspelling addresses, not completing addresses, etc. So we're looking at bringing in this additional app that will, as you start entering an address, it will then start to populate, which means then we've got good detail in there, including things like postcodes and zip codes, etc. It's a product that can be used worldwide.
Yeah.
I actually have a question as well. Obviously, we do forecasts for the Fender Care Group every 3 months and an annual budget, which we're looking to put into NetSuite. We haven't gone into detail of how that will work yet. But obviously, when we assign the quotas to everyone, is there a way that can look back at what our budget or forecast is for that month and say, your forecast was 100 grand, but you've only assigned quotas of 70, so you've got a gap here of 30?
Let me quickly double check if I answer quickly. If not, I'll take it off and come back. Might have to take that one and come back to you. The only one I'm aware, budget versus actual is one of the only core reports that you can pull out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if
Okay.
you can do budget versus forecast standard, or you have to build something.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have brought the advanced financials module because I think that had the ability to load up the forecasting and the budgeting and do all
Yeah,
that.
that gives you multiple budgets, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you could run variations of your budget against your actual. So in here, in your budget versus actual, you'd have, in fact, I've got it on my account here. So you can see I've got my different revisions, and I can just run these different budget revisions against my actuals in here. So that's that's one of the things advanced financials gives you.
Yeah.
I still don't think it's to do with how the data tables are all joined, and budget's a funny table in NetSuite. It's quite it's a bit of a pariah. It's sort of out there on its own, and there's not very many joins to it. So I don't think there is a join between the budget and the forecast, which I think you may need to make something custom to pull it together, or even make some sort of join to pull the report in. It's not that it's not doable. It's just it might not fall out of the it might just fall out of the standard stuff.
That's what we want to hear, Mark, is that it's doable.
Everything's doable.
The answer is yes. What's the question?
Correct.
Isn't it? It's the customer.
Yes. You can script it, guys, even with a script, because we have two GPs here in our company. So even with a small JSON script, you can definitely do it, guys, for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you.
I've just got a quick question for Mark Anderson and Theo. Just a sort of a general question. When you implemented NetSuite into your business, kind of what was the sort of transition period for you guys, and did you use something previously to transition to, or was this a new install essentially with this?
I'll let you go first, Theo.
No problem at all. The guys used to have here Microsoft, Great Plains. So we have transitioned to NetSuite, but as we are not such a good example, why? Because what I was saying to you, we are fully customized platform. So if you see our dashboards, our forms, and everything is fully customized system. So it's gonna take way more time because we have like workflows, scripting, everything new, bespoke also applications. So the transition was about 6 to 9 months for us, but it was a huge project to have in mind.
Yeah.
So huge imports, huge historic data also. So we're talking data from 2002.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, it was a big project. But no, if you don't have such huge volume of data, transition would be seamless, to be honest with you, as long as the historic data imports are correct, of course. That's a crucial bit. That's about it.
Again, Ben,
what did you do, Theo? Did you run two systems side by side, or did you just flick the switch?
Correct. No, imagine to have an idea, just in case, because by GDPR you have to have some historic data live still. So we still maintain MS Great Plains, but it's very limited because it's only one license, to be honest with you. And now, as we speak, as we migrate everything in NetSuite, so everything side by side, export, compare that data, import, compare data, and still maintain the old database for 6 to 7 years.
Oh, okay. I'll let Jeff worry about that.
already thought of, Ben, what we're going to use for the time being, so, and how we're going to.
I apologise. I'm coming in a bit late as well. Actually, I'm kind of.
No, that's fine. I'm going to ask something about how do you find analytics? Easy to use?
Are you asking me or
anyone?
Yeah, it's easy. You can get good results in very little time.
Okay.
So I guess Mark, same question to you, Mark, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no worries. So we started our NetSuite journey in 2017. We basically started a new subsidiary in the US. So we went live with the US subsidiary. We didn't come from any system before it. It was a brand new instance. So we got that set up in maybe a month and a half. Kind of used that as a springboard to get familiar with NetSuite. We then brought our UK operation on to NetSuite 2019, and that project took about a year to transition from our old on-prem ERP, if you could call it that. It's very basic, but we've just massively outgrown it. We spent a lot of time cleaning up the data to import. We went from something like 10,000 item records down to maybe 1,000, 1,500. So, yeah, the biggest task getting ready was cleaning up the data. We went live 1st of Jan 2019 with our with finance and all of our stock control and ordering. But prior to that, we've got our customer care team on using the support management system, so cases and the CRM functionality. So we did do a bit of a kind of staggered go live, but yeah, the final transition was on the start of the new year. And then in 2020, we went live with the Irish subsidiary as well, which is another new business. So we didn't come from another system there, and it's very, very quick to create the subsidiary. I mean, you know, within an hour we were up and running. We've been gradually getting more and more set up in NetSuite as we've gone on. So replacing a lot of standalone legacy systems using NetSuite custom records and custom forms. We've built a complaint and non-performance system, for example. Building with Mark actually a net promoter score system to automate capturing customer feedback, and I've got that now live as a KPI on my dashboard for IT tickets, and that's all calculated correctly. That's all working really, really well. Yeah, so I mean, there's still a lot of legacy stuff that we could do with getting rid of. The next big project that we're working on is getting our document control, so our DCR process into NetSuite, and our SOP training. So our employee training at the moment is managed on a health and safety kind of system. It's horrendous to use, no reporting, no visibility. So you know, that's the next big project. And again, it's just custom records. You can join records together without much issue. You know, with very little experience and time. So yeah, it's really powerful. You just need to spend the time looking at custom records and things. I think some of the things I would, the key things to take away from me would be get the, I think it's called the Advanced Performance Management bundle installed, as you can get some really useful insights into what the system's doing. And when I was, you know, a newbie and setting up workflows and things without much, you know, real understanding of what the impact of some of the things are, when you've got this management bundle, you can see what you know, when your workflows are running, how long they're taking, any scripts that are running, how long they're taking, so you can actually really get under the hood in terms of the performance. And yeah, I found out about that maybe a year ago, and that would have been a game changer if we had that from the start. Any questions for me?
Mark, can I ask you something? For your P&Ls, are you using two types of GP? I mean, you're using forecast GP and actual GP or not?
Yeah, we're using forecast and actual. Yeah.
Okay. And about the bundles and the plugins that you were saying, we found useful also, guys, sticky notes. It's very useful, to be honest with you. So you can go to any custom record or any record basically in NetSuite or a page and attach sticky notes to a user on your same network. So it's really useful actually. And there are many interesting bundles like the flashlight bundle about finding records. You have loads of very interesting actually bundles for NetSuite.
What's that bundle called there?
Sticky notes.
Sticky notes. Okay, cool.
Yeah. All the Adobe sign also to sign PDF files and stuff like that, because we're generating contracts. So we are generating contracts here from NetSuite straight to a PDF file. So for our brokers here. So yeah, there are many bundles out there actually.
There's a really good one that I put in a couple of months ago, Google Maps integration. So what it does is based on well, we use a postcode field, but I think it works with any address field in the system. It's really tailored to transactions and customers, but we've got it working on events where we pop in a postcode, it calls the Google Maps API to get the latitude and longitude, which it sticks in a couple of fields, and then you can create saved searches to basically return set results. So, for example, we've got we're calculating the average wait time of an appointment from the date it's created to the date of the actual appointment, and then save searches for appointments within 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and then using the maps integration, stacking them on top of each other with different colored pins so you can create a heat map to see where the long wait times are for the appointments. And that was relatively inexpensive. It's something like £600 a year or something. So that's really cool. We use the Infinite Payroll and leave management system as well. That's UK, Australia and New Zealand specific payroll and leave management. That's working really well. We also have a couple of Verinia bundles. So Verinia are a company in the States. They have a guided selling module, which is kind of like an Amazon shopping basket style interface for when you're raising quotes and orders. You can create your own filters and it dynamically adjusts what gets seen. And then there's a CPQ module as well, so a product configurator. We've got quite complex chairs that we make and sell. So all of our sales guys are using those to spec up the chairs and produce error-free quotes as well. That's really powerful bundle. Got quite a hefty price tag, but just for error-free quotes, it's brilliant. What else are we using? File drag and drop. That's a good one as well. That's a free one. You can customize the plugin so that on any record type, apart from inbound shipments, which it doesn't work on, you can just drag files from your local machine from your desktop and drop them on the record, and it sticks them in the file cabinet and relates them to that record as well. So we have things like signed contracts and if I've got a PO from another company and I'll drag it on there, terms of service, all that kind of stuff. So that's really useful as well.
That's something we do now in our existing CRM system. Drag and drop a lot of the files. So that's definitely something we would need. I'm sure Jeff's already got all the freebies. Got all the freebies, Jeff?
Yeah, we got the freebies, but also one of the things that we're looking at, and that's one of the things I was going to ask you guys. Do you use Cloud Extend at all?
Oh yeah, we do that.
Yes, yeah.
Good. Okay, it's one of the things we're going to be using.
Outlook integration.
Outlook integration.
Yep.
NetSuite has its own. So basically, you can generate an email from NetSuite, and it will have a thread. And when you send it out to the client, when they respond, it will automatically drop their response back against, like a contact inquiry, an opportunity or whatever.
Correct.
But also, there's going to be times when that isn't in there. And what you can use is Cloud Extend to actually link it into NetSuite into an opportunity or into, like a customer or whatever. So that's something that we're going to be looking at. Do you guys use web forms a lot?
Yeah. We've got forms for cases and so online case forms, and also with custom records, you can create an online form for that as well. Yeah. So, for example, the MPS system that's using an online form.
Because one of the things that we're looking towards using is using web forms for supply management. So, from a due diligence perspective, compliance, and rather than having to go out to them each time, is that it will note that something is running out on there in insurance or whatever, and then that will ping back out to the supplier as well, sort of to update it, and then that will be fed back in. So that's one thing we're looking at big time of using.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, go on.
Go for it. No, please go for it. Don't you worry.
No, I was gonna change the subject, so you carry on.
Only for this, Jeff. Just be careful. So what we've done here, in order not to reduce our database size, NetSuite have implemented this great feature which is called other relationships. So you can have multiple records out there. One record, for instance, we're having customers and suppliers here we're using, but they use the same record, but all regarding the records is different. So for auditing purposes, so you could use the single record through other relationships.
Right.
But you have to search about it a bit, okay? But it's a great feature.
That's good.
Just another really cool feature, save search alerts. So I don't know if you guys have heard of that. I'll just give a quick explanation. So you can create a save search to return, pretty well, you can return anything. So for example, appointments cancelled today. And you can create an alert so that as soon as a new result gets added to that search result, it just happens in the background automatically. It can trigger an email. So, for example, with a cancelled appointment, you can specify on the alert: do you want this to go to like a static person or a contact? That could be an employee, it could be an external contact, or you can do recipients from results, which is nice. So you could pick the attendee, and then the alert will go to whoever is attending that appointment. That's something that's really easy to set up and use.
Or even schedule it. Yeah, that's great feature actually. Or even scheduler automation. So getting safety guys. So the finance department, for instance, needs to capture this set of data. You can schedule it and automate it. So every once per week or every day or every month, whenever this is basically, because you can use FX variants also, like Excel Word variants. So you can do pretty much, yeah, whatever you like.
Good. Well, guys, that's been good. Thank you. Good to talk to you
Really
as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing
Nice
those
to see the
thoughts.
system used as well, Mark. Sorry.
Yeah, very helpful.
So it kind of gives us a bit more for when we're using it. I've sort of seen a few shortcuts you're using there in terms of like creating new tabs on the browser and things like that. That's really useful as well. That's good. Thank you.
Good, glad you enjoyed it.
One more thing, sorry guys. There's some really good browser extensions, Chrome extensions for some like dev tools. Show field IDs. There's a portlet refresher one that's really good. Because at the moment, when you log in on your home screen, the portlets, where you've got your reminders and the charts and stuff, they don't automatically refresh. So there's a Chrome plugin that will do that for you. We use that. There's quite a few. Show field IDs is one. So you can just hover over a field and you get the ID of it. And there's another one which, it's called NetSuite Field Explorer. When you're viewing a record, you can click on that, and it basically gives you the all the data that's on the form, so you can see all the field IDs, all the values of all of the drop downs that are selected, and things like that. It's really powerful.
Yeah, we're using them also, Mark, to be honest. Yeah, and the scripted records one. So if you have lots of script running, and the scripted record one for Chrome is useful also, guys.
Yeah, there's a safe search to script one as well. I'm not sure what that's called, but I think, Mark, you showed me that a couple of weeks ago. That was really cool. Where you create a safe search and then you can hit a button and it generates the code for it to run as a suite script. Yeah, it's very interesting.
I like the sound of that.
Just want to be clear that we did not set up Theo and Mark to come on and
whatever Fiona.
It gives us comfort as a business, like to understand, there's users out there, and how they're feeling and some of the things that they're doing. Is there a user group as such, like that you regularly meet or something, communicate with?
This is it.
This is it.
Nope,
that's
it. No,
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, so we try, like I said, we started these last year as sort of a way to bring, especially during lockdown, bring people together and sort of let our customers sort of see something new from our side, but also, get the opportunity to talk informally and sort of have a bit of a discussion. So we are going to be making these. So the next one for the roundtable, we're actually going to be pushing them back out to sort of bi-monthly. So it'll be September, and the topic for that one will most likely be the new release. So the next release wave is due out around sort of that, right, Mark, sort of September, October time. Yeah. So that's what we'll be covering, and then obviously there'll be the interactive Q&A piece, conversation piece at the end. The invite will go out. You're all more than welcome to join. Obviously, we'll try and record as where we can and send that out after the session if you're not able to join live. But yeah, so I'm just conscious that we have gone over slightly, so I hope I've not kept you all from something else. So we are we'll wrap up now, if that's okay with everybody. If you've got any other questions, please feel free to email myself, and I will send that round to Mark and the team. And get someone to come back to you if there's something particular you'd like to find out more about. Again, thanks to Theo and to Mark for joining us. It's great to see you guys, and thanks for sharing your insights so far. And obviously, if you guys have any questions, you know who to go to these days. But if you need anything, just give any one of us a shout, and we'll always be happy to help where we can. And yeah, great to have Fendercare on board. And well, I know you're not live yet, but it's going to be a really great, exciting journey for you, I hope.
Yeah, good luck, guys. I'm sure you'll smash it.
Yeah, it'll be good. Yeah, been a long time coming.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Anyway, thanks very much.